In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, Christ is in our midst. So today I wanted to just tie together how the church thinks. And I've done this before on feast days and names days of different people in the church. So today is the conception of St. Anna of the Most Holy Theotokos. You might be saying, well, why do we need to celebrate this day? What's the big deal? Well, the big deal is the fact that St. Anna, the mother of the Virgin Mary, did not have children her whole life. In fact, some of the iconography that depicts her holding the Virgin Mary as a small child, and there's lines drawn in her face as to symbolize old age, because she was barren, and it was considered a great shame not to have any children. So after prayer and after supplicating God, after fasting of her husband, they come together and conceive the Virgin Mary, and then the Virgin Mary becomes the one that they had made the promise, if they were to have a child, that it would be dedicated to the service of the temple. And at about 3 years of age, she was taken to the temple, where she was placed and received in the temple. And the story goes on from there. But what I wanted to do was just kind of tie in how today ties in with the gospel and the epistle reading, because many times we hear these and we don't really kind of pick out what the theme is. So the gospel reading today is, you just heard it, hopefully you heard it, is about a woman who's bent over for 18 years. Christ goes into the temple, he heals the woman, and then they critique him, they judge him, they yell at him for healing on the Sabbath, which in itself is a whole other story to talk about. And Christ admonishes them and says, you're a bunch of hypocrites. Don't you even loosen your animals on the Sabbath day to receive water and to walk around? Why shouldn't this woman be healed? But why this gospel reading? All right, there's many themes that can be picked out of this gospel reading, but one of them that ties in into today is the fact that this woman had been bound for 18 years. Now, understanding numbers in the gospel, 12 years, the 12 months, the 12 tribes of Israel. There's the 40 days, the 40 days that Christ fasted, the 40 days that he rose from the dead. But then we look and we see that this woman was 18 years. 18 years is a number beyond just a couple of days, beyond just a couple of years, beyond 12 years or 3 years. It's an extraordinary amount of time. And she's bent over. And where does Christ meet her? He meets her in the temple. He meets her in church. And she's bent over. And he goes up to her and he has mercy upon her and heals her. She doesn't say anything. She doesn't ask him for anything. She doesn't say, if you're God, can you heal me? She's bent over in the temple, not even seeing what's in front of her. Now you think of that. She's in church, can't even see probably Christ coming. I mean, you see the icon in your bulletin, and she's leaned over like this. Christ comes up to her, has mercy on her, and heals her. Why this gospel reading? Because of a couple things. First of all, the faith that she had, that she was in the temple. Despite being sick, she was in church. She was praising God. She was glorifying God. God sees that through the person of Christ and heals her. But 18 years she suffered. 18 years of being bent over, not being able to see in another person's eye, not being able to stand upright, not being able to reach things in her home probably. And then you think of, how does that tie into St. Anna? A lifetime of being barren, of not having a child, but yet still going to God and saying, do this for me because I love you. And if you do this, I will in turn dedicate her to you, to God. And we see that the child that St. Anna bears, the Virgin Mary, becomes the vessel for Christ to be born into this world. But she didn't give up. Even as an old lady, she didn't give up asking for that and said, with trust in God, if you do this, I will give her back to you. And God knows this and receives, and her and her husband, Joachim and Anna, both receive greetings from the angels. Many times we think the angels were, they're kind of up here and they only had like a couple things that they did during the time of Christ. They said, they stood from the mountaintop and said, "Behold, a king is born today." We think of the little child who does that in the nativity scenes that we see and those types of things. But we really think about just a couple times the Annunciation of to the Virgin Mary, the angels there, and we think of when Christ is born, the angels there. But the angels have been throughout history been appearing. It wasn't just a one-time job. And Joachim and Anna both had that vision from the angels, and the angels saying, "You will conceive, and that which will be born of you will be blessed and will be the cause of many their redemption through the birth that she will give." Now, if we go to the epistle, and we go kind of to the last line of the epistle, it says, "Rejoice, O barren one who does not bear, break forth and shout, you who are not in travail, for the children of the desolate one are made more than the children of her that is married." So what do we see here? St. Paul's talking about something else. He's talking about the covenant of God, but it's tied into today because that last sentence speaks directly about St. Anna. That rejoice, O barren one who does not bear. Rejoice, Anna, who doesn't have a child. Break forth and shout, you who are not in travail. For the children of the desolate one are many more than the children of her that is married. So what does that mean? The child that she's going to bear, that one child, the one child in her old age that's going to be given to the church is more than if she had a dozen children. That one child is given as a gift back to the church. So the church itself knows how to pick the gospel readings and the epistle readings for us as a teaching and a lesson for us. But what I want you to do is when you see this, when you see the conception of St. Anna, and you see the conception of St. John, and you might think, boy, what does that have to do with anything? Well, you have to understand that there is a whole story behind everything that is said in these little lines. In these lines that say, well, the consecration of the church of the resurrection, the Holy Sepulchre. We see that and we say, okay, wow, they consecrated the church. What is it? Well, who consecrated the church? St. Helen. It's just up on the right now. I can point to the side as we start to get the icons up. If I say St. Peter and Paul, he's over there. St. Constantine and Helen over there on the wall. So St. Helen was the one who made sure that was happening. But we look at all these other saints and these stories, and it ties into the gospel. It ties into the epistle. And what I want you to take from today's gospel reading is the fact that no matter how much time has gone by, no matter how much, you might think it might be eternity, and it's too much for you, and you can't handle it, and you want God's grace on you now, and you want His gift on you now. No matter how much time has gone by, God does not forsake us. He doesn't leave us alone. He doesn't forget about us. He doesn't say, you know what, it's been 18 years. I can't stand you up. It's been 18 years. Think of all the damage that's been done to your body in 18 years. He doesn't do that. He goes up and says, straighten up. Here you go. You're freed from that. He goes to Anna and says, through the angel, you will conceive. Your prayer is heard. That's the key. All our prayers are heard. Your prayer is heard. It's not will be heard, not maybe will be heard, someday will be heard, is heard immediately. And the answer to that prayer comes through time. It comes through continued prayer, continued dedication, and also, many times, you look at I remember seeing on TV once they were talking about oranges in Florida, and they said that they have this machine, and they even have it on Mount Athos. I saw it too for the olives, and it's a machine, and it grabs the tree. It's like a clamper thing, and it grabs a tree and it shakes the tree, and then everything falls off the tree that's ripe. So you don't have to go pick and decide. You just shake it, and whatever's ripe falls, and then they harvest it. And then they go back later and do it again another day or whatever, and whatever's ripe falls. You don't have to sit and pick and choose. So what's ready to be picked by God will fall into our arms and fall into our hands. And those things that are not ready yet will take some time to develop and mature, but God continually is there to hear our prayers, to answer our prayers, and sometimes to really make us think about what our prayers are too. You know, there's that, some people might pray, I was with somebody the other day, and it was when the lotto was like $500 bajillion or whatever it was, and they're all talking about what they're going to do if they win. And the one person said, well, he goes, wouldn't that be great? And I said, it would bring blessings and it would bring a lot of devastation to your life too. And then he's like, okay, maybe I better talk to somebody else about what I'm going to do with my money. Needless to say, he did not win, so he can still ponder that. But the other thing too is it takes effort on our part, but it also takes discerning what we're asking for to be legitimate in prayer. Is praying to win the lottery the thing that you should be calling out in prayer? That you should say, Lord, help me win the lottery because it's going to make my day better. Is that going to save your soul? Is that the means to save your soul? Is that the only vessel to bring you holiness? And there's a joke about that where this man, he's praying every day of his life to win the lottery, and he dies and he goes to heaven, and he's talking to St. Peter, and he says, St. Peter, every day of my life I prayed to win the lottery, and you didn't let me win. Why didn't you let me win? And St. Peter said, well, God heard your prayer, but you also needed to do one thing. And he said, well, what was that? And he said, buy a lottery ticket. But when it comes to our prayers, we have to take that initiative. It's not about the lottery. It's not about winning that. It's not about the things that are secular that bring us temporary fame or temporary glory. It's about saying in our prayer, what is it that we really truly need? And are we asking for that? And many times when people say to me, they say, God doesn't hear my prayer. He's not answering it. And then I say, well, what is your prayer? And then after listening to it, or even saying it out loud to me, they say, well, maybe that's not the best thing I should be praying for. Maybe that isn't good for me. Maybe it's not the best thing for my salvation. Maybe I should pray for God's will to be done instead, and not pray for my own glory, or not pray for my own benefit, but for the benefit of all people and the benefit of our souls. So when God doesn't answer your prayer exactly the way you want, it's probably because you don't need that. You don't need that prayer answered the way that you wanted it to be answered. But also those things that reach out to do God's will that we ask for, and those things that we say to God, do this for me because I know you can and because it's good for my soul. Then God answers those things, despite how much time has gone by. Despite how much time has gone by when we realize we should be asking for that, or how much time has gone by while we are praying for that. I can't even think for a second that St. Anna just woke up one day and said, you know what? I'm 70 years old. I'm going to start praying to God to have a baby. I don't think that was the case at all. I think she prayed her entire life for that. And the writings of the church speak to that. But even in her old age, there came a point in time where it was the miracle beyond what she could have asked for. The true blessing. Sometimes people have children and they think it's like, it's like going to McDonald's and placing an order. I'll take a boy and we'll name him after my dad, and I'll take a girl, 2 boys first and then a girl, and then people have all these things of, this is what we're going to have. But you look at St. Anna, who now is at the end of her life and knows, and everybody knows, that it was God's miracle that caused her to have a child. There's no way of getting around that. You can't look at her and say, That old lady there is, she had that baby on her own. It's a gift from God, period. It was God's blessing. So sometimes we wait so that we understand that it's not us that is doing the gift, that is bringing the gift to us, but that when all else fails, and when we realize that we can't do anything, then God comes and says, here. And then with that, what do we do in return? We are supposed to dedicate our lives back to God as the gift back to Him and thank Him for that miracle. May the miracle of the conception of St. Anna, the mother of the Theotokos, and those continual miracles that are there be with us this day and always. Amen.